From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Smart global investing requires expertise from the ground up. With insights from local experts across the world, we have a unique perspective on global investing. Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective.
Geico, committed to providing service to its auto insurance customers for over 70 years. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO, any time of the day or night.
If, for such a small word, it packs a wallop. If I live to 100, if Social Security isn't enough, if my heart gets broken, if she says yes. We believe IF should never hold you back. IF should be managed with a plan that builds on what you already have. Together, we can create a personal safety net, a launching pad for all those brilliant ifs in the middle of life. You can call on our expertise and get guarantees for the if in life. After all, we're MetLife.
Issue 1, Born in the USA.
We've had every official in Hawaii, Democrat and Republican, every news outlet that has investigated this, confirm that, yes, in fact, I was born in Hawaii, August 4th, 1961, in Kapi'olani Hospital.
President Obama released his original long-form certificate of live birth this week. It states that Barack Obama's place of birth is Honolulu, Hawaii. The certificate includes signatures from the attending doctor, the local registrar, and the president's mother, Stanley Ann Dunham. It also includes the name of the president's father, Barack Hussein Obama. This week's release of the long-form certificate is intended to snuff out the so-called birther claim, namely that President Obama is not a U.S. citizen. A recent national poll says that 25% of Americans say they do not believe, and 18% of Americans say they do not know whether the U.S. president is a U.S. citizen. Both groups are nicknamed birthers. President Obama included this jab for those very birthers this week.
We got better stuff to do. I've got better stuff to do. We got big problems to solve, and I'm confident we can solve them. We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
Some say the quote-unquote carnival barker words are intended for Donald Trump, the international real estate entrepreneur. Mr. Trump had demanded that President Obama furnish his official birth certificate, and Mr. Trump congratulated himself on so doing.
Today, I'm very proud of myself because I've accomplished something that nobody else has been able to accomplish. We have to look at it. We have to see, is it real? Is it proper? What's on it? But I hope it checks out beautifully. Question, why did President Obama wait so long to squelch this controversy, Pat Buchanan?
He made a mistake, John. It was working for a long time for him. It appeared to be this young president who had already put out a certificate of live birth, who was being hassled by a bunch of conspiracy theorists and all the rest. Then Donald Trump got onto it and began pounding it and saying, where's the original birth certificate? And the issue metastasized. 3/4 of Iowa Republicans said Obama's born outside of the country or they don't know whether he was. It was beginning to meld into the independents and damaging Obama there. Belatedly, after a lot of people who were in the center said, for heaven's sakes, release the birth certificate, Obama did it. And I'll tell you, John, this is a tremendous victory for Donald Trump.
Why didn't he do it in the first round?
I think he should have done it right after the election of 2000.
Why didn't he? Why?
I think maybe he feels it was beneficial. But let me say this.
He didn't want to dignify the issue?
That could have been it. But let me say this. Donald Trump won this battle hands down. He grabbed this issue. He went to the top of the polls among Republicans. Then he gets the President of the United States, forces him to march into the White House press room and reverse a decision he took 2.5 years ago.
Eleanor, you knock down negative stories right away. It's a basic political rule.
Why didn't he knock it down right away?
Well, first of all, the state of Hawaii does not release this long-form certificate. He had to send his personal lawyer over there in order to get a copy made, and he had to ask for a special exemption. Frankly, this looked like a joke among fringe people in this country, and there was no reason to take it seriously. It was independents, who everybody seeks in the electorate, were repelled by this, and you saw the Republicans basically winking and nodding, saying, well, we take him at his word that he's a citizen, but kind of suggesting, well, maybe not, because they liked this feeding the activist element within their party. So it was working actually for both parties. But Pat is right. It did seep into the mainstream of the electorate. And I remember when the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth undermined John Kerry's campaign, and they waited through a long summer thinking that people couldn't possibly take it seriously. And so I think the president came in at the right moment, and I don't see how this is a big victory for Donald Trump, who was proven wrong in all his innuendo about the birth certificate. And if the Republicans want to nominate Donald Trump, hooray!
Is the controversy now closed?
I think so on the birth certificate, but let's be clear that the rumors about Obama's birth certificate actually began out of the Hillary Clinton campaign. It came out of the Democrats. Look, the whole issue was never about the birth certificate per se. It was about some other things. First of all, the fact that Barack Obama was never properly vetted by an adoring, drooling lapdog press the way every other presidential candidate of both parties has been in recent times. The other point that I want to make is that we are a results-oriented society in America. Perhaps the biggest reason why Bill Clinton was able to get away with perjury and obstruction of justice is that he was delivering a booming economy for the American people, and so the sideshow of the Lewinsky scandal was considered irrelevant. In this circumstance, these questions have been percolating now for a while because Obama has not been able to deliver economically for the American people. High unemployment, now high inflation, very weak economic growth. If this economy were booming, all of these questions would have receded into the background.
Hold on, Maud. Okay, Donald Trump on the current state of American media.
The press is very protective of President Obama. Very protective. They're not protective of me, but they're protective of President Obama.
Is Donald Trump right, Maud?
Well, perhaps to some degree. I just want to go back to why he didn't reveal it earlier, why the president, frankly, it was insulting. I mean, I think there was nobody else in this country who would have had to go through what Obama went through, and it had, I believe, a racist component to it. I think it was outrageous that he had to have gone through this. But anyways, he did it. I don't think that the press is necessarily protective of the president. It seemed to be kind of off the charts kind of charge. So I don't think a lot of people didn't take it seriously. It was, as Pat said, though, something that was seeping into the mainstream, and because of the way Donald Trump was focusing on it. So I think it was right for him to do it. But frankly, I think it was insulting, and if I were he, I would have felt the same way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's insulting to not only Barack Obama, but a lot of black people in this country who wonder what kind of a gauntlet this president has to run. But I also don't like slandering the Hillary Clinton campaign here. They didn't question the authenticity of the birth certificate. That comes out of a Mark Penn memo saying he couldn't believe that the country would elect someone who had come out of the American experience because he had spent so much time abroad and so forth. They never went. Excuse me. They didn't go down that track, and they never questioned the birth certificate.
Let me talk about the protective press. All right. And we heard the word racist thrown out here, potentially racist. And they're saying Donald Trump is racist because he wants to see Obama's test scores. George Bush got a 1206 on a scholastic aptitude test because the New Yorker magazine dug it up and mocked it and laughed at it. They found out what Al Gore's scores were. They were 1350. They dug up John Kerry's scores. But somebody asked for Barack Obama's scores, and it's racist, when Barack Obama himself admitted he benefited from affirmative action in 1990.
And you know why they're asking, Pat? Because you went on television and said it's affirmative action all the way.
Obama admitted it. Obama admitted it in 1990 on November 16th. And
I say, hooray, if affirmative action turns out a U.S. president, let's put it
It's
Let's
not going
put
to
it
turn him
throughout
out.
the country.
Why don't
They
you
produced
ask these questions?
him because he's an intellectual. There's no question about his intellectual capacity.
Why don't you ask for his
And the fact that
there is a lot in Obama's origins and past that still remains murky.
What?
And you
Like
get
what? Like what?
Yeah, it remains. You name it. Selective. The draft records, the medical records, the school
records.
Who paid
Draft
for his
records.
education?
There was no draft,
Of course,
Monica.
who paid for his education? All of
Do
these
we have a
outstanding
right to
questions.
know? Do we have a right to know
Yes,
all
we
that?
do.
And
We
you know
do?
what?
Why do we have a right to
Because
know
he's
all
a
that?
president of the United States, and the reporters used to go after
And
all
it
this
should have been
information.
done
Do you
a
think
very
it's a
long
legitimate
ago.
query? These are all
They're
legitimate
legit.
queries.
They've always been legitimate
For
queries.
every-
Do you
everybody.
think that
Excuse me. It
Yeah,
may have been a
right.
legitimate
For
query the first
everybody.
time around. At this stage, 2 years later,
Right,
frankly.
but they were never
it's-
answered.
Why is it
Lord.
not?
What
They
is
were
the
never
impact?
answered.
Hold on, please. What is the impact of this story in the international press and the way it's playing it up abroad? Say in Paris or London or Berlin.
Well, I don't want to say that I'm totally familiar with all of these responses, but I do think it is going to be seen in many parts of the world as a part of an American history of racism.
No, they're seeing
No,
us as
no,
nuts.
no.
It's a risk.
I saw the headlines from Britain. They say, the America is losing its senses and all this other stuff. They think it's ridiculous that we're going into the birthir issue.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
The man was elected. Get over it.
But
And
not- these
asking
questions
asking how he paid for his college education. I remember reading about his
the
student
true
loans.
birthers probably feel he's an
defending him.
imposter.
Come on.
Well, that's what the questions are designed to further. The notion that he somehow snuck into this office and he's
Eleanor,
undeserving.
Exit question. This is the first political bloodletting of campaign 2012. So who trumped whom? Did Obama trump Trump, or did Trump trump Obama? Pat Buchanan.
Trump went from zero to being competitive among Republicans, forced the president into the press room to get his birth certificate, said bring it back, and Obama brought it back. Trump won it hands down.
Do you think it was a foregone conclusion that President Obama would have to reveal it?
By the end of the argument, I was just
You
yelling
think
on
he kept
television, please reveal it and get it out of the
You
way.
think he kept it alive by bringing the full certificate
I think he
forward?
deliberately kept it alive. I don't know why, but he kept it alive too long, and it began to hurt him.
Do you think he knew all along that he could produce this birth certificate on call, and he was saving it in order to direct the press to cover this and not cover, say, this weekend like Bernanke?
No, I mean, I think he was holding it off for some reason. I'm not sure which. People said it's an embarrassment. Why should I do this? Mort says maybe so. But he held it too long. 3 weeks ago, he should have done it.
Well, 3 weeks ago or 2 days ago, it was a degrading thing for this president to have to get involved in. I'm glad he finally did it. He lanced the boil to some extent, but there, people who would never vote for him anyway are not going to let up. There'll be more conspiracy theories out there.
It's so easy to deal with, and the way you deal with it's just to release the document.
But it's not
so
about.
why didn't he do that?
Why didn't he do that?
I don't know.
Why didn't he
but
do it in
I
the first round?
This is where Pat's right. He should have done it a lot earlier. This never should have been the kind of
Is
initiative.
there anything else
it
for
was
you
a
to
lot.
say on
It
that?
wasn't
He should have released it a long time ago. Failing that, the press should have done their job and investigated his past, which they still resist doing. And the third reason why all of these questions continue to percolate up is because Obama's policies seem fundamentally antithetical to what made this country great in the first place.
Talk about a pile
and that
of
feeds those
innuendo.
kinds of. It's the truth, Eleanor.
I think it was benefit for Donald Trump, as Pat says.
No.
But I don't think it was a loss for the Obama in the end.
Maybe in the slightly longer run that Trump will be trumped by Obama on this. Issue 2, tank torment.
Whenever gas prices shoot up, like clockwork, you see politicians racing to the cameras, waving three-point plans for $2 gas. The truth is, there is no silver bullet that can bring down gas prices right away.
The president says, in effect, that he cannot perform magic to drive down the price of gasoline. This week, the average national price of a gallon of gasoline reached $3.87. That's 24 cents below the all-time national average, which peaked in 2008 at $4.11 per gallon. Mr. Obama says don't look to him to save the day, but Donald Trump, the international entrepreneur, says a lot the president can do.
Now, yesterday, our president said that he has very little impact over the price of gasoline. I think he's 100% wrong.
Some say there are several realistic courses of action the president can initiate. 1, Strategic Petroleum Reserve tapped temporarily into the country's emergency oil supply, 700 million barrels of oil stored off the coast of New Orleans. President Clinton tapped into the reserve in year 2000 when he faced a price spike above $3 a gallon. President George W. Bush did the same when prices topped $3.50 a gallon. 2. Restore the 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. Drivers would be annoyed, true, but it would reduce demand for gas, which would bring down gas prices. 3. More drilling permits. Seriously ramp up production of U.S. domestic oil reserves. When speculators realize the current price is as high as it will get, and that the U.S. government is determined to do so, speculators will sell holdings of oil futures, and that sell-off will cause the price per barrel to drop significantly. That, in turn, will be reflected at the pump. 4. Resist green energy fanatics. They want gasoline prices to zoom to $8 per gallon with European-style gas taxes, so consumers will switch to green energy cars like hybrids and use mass transit like buses. Pollution-free air is their goal, but President Obama says he wants to move towards green energy, not away from it. Some say that is a bad idea. 5, don't take away $4 billion in tax cuts for big oil. The industry will only pass on their cost of paying higher taxes to motorists in the form of higher consumer prices for their gasoline.
Question, what does President Obama want? Is it to wean America off oil? Is that his objective? I ask you, Eleanor.
Well, that's an eventual objective, but we're not getting there anytime soon. And frankly, the gas prices rise, gases too, rise this time of the year, and they come down because it's the driving season, and there's some speculation involved, and the gas tanks have to convert to a different kind of blends. And then you have all the turmoil in the Middle East, and it's a question whether that's an excuse or an explanation. But I thought the president is right in calling on the Congress to eliminate those subsidies to the oil companies. Exxon's profits went up 69% over the same time last year. And Boehner, the speaker, looked like he was going to go along with it until his religion got in the way, his anti-tax orthodoxy.
Okay, look who agrees with the president that tax breaks for big oil companies should be canceled.
We're in a time when the federal government's short on revenues. We need to control spending, but we need to have revenues to keep the government moving, and they ought to be paying their fair share.
So what do you think about that, Pat?
It's $4 billion. It's peanuts. It's peanuts. And Exxon makes, you know what they make in profit? 8 cents on the dollar.
Oh, poor little Exxon.
No, that's it. But here's the problem. The president is right in this sense, John. The overall problem is that all the oil producers in the country, many of them have peaked and have started to diminish the supply. And coming onto the world demand is China and India and Brazil and these emerging countries. The pressure of demand on supply is going to grow. We are never going back to, I think, the $3 or $2 a gallon gasoline, or the oil price is not going to $50 a barrel. Because
why is China giving tax subsidies for the purchase of cars?
Right. Well, I'll tell you what the Chinese are doing right now is they're going around the world to Venezuela. They're buying up in advance enormous amounts of oil. And they're playing for the future, and the United States should do the same.
They're not only doing it in Venezuela, they did it in Iran. They've got huge energy investments and holdings in Iran, and that's one of the reasons why they're so close to Iran. And they are, as you say, developing a long-term plan. The problem that we don't have a long-term plan, we don't have a short-term plan. We have a tremendous amount of energy available within this country or in the offshore, and we're not allowing people to go after it, and we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars abroad. It's one of the most insane programs that this country has, and it's totally counterproductive to the consumer and to the government.
The last time gas hit $4 a gallon, then Speaker Nancy Pelosi went before the cameras and blamed the high gas prices on the, quote, 2 oil men in the White House. She has yet to make any remarks about this time around with gas over $4 a gallon. Look, this administration has made it very clear they wanted cap and trade. They wanted to reduce our dependence on oil, but they wanted that supplanted by this huge new tax on consumption, energy consumption on the American public. If they had gotten the cap and trade through with the Congress, that would have been tantamount to the largest tax increase in the history of the world. When that failed, he has then tried to rebrand it as green energy. That is also Pat, failing, those subsidies.
Have you noticed that the oil rigs in the Gulf are disappearing and they're moving off the coast of Brazil? and that means they're feeding an international
It is exactly
border.
right.
Is that compounding, is this denial of the Gulf
Look,
compounding the whole problem?
It is. Look, the United States is very foolish. We are in a fiercely competitive world. A lot of these countries are going after their oil because it's an enormous supply of revenue for them. And when the United States shuts itself in, whether it's up in Alaska or off Florida or off the Gulf Coast, the United States is just pulling itself out of. John, the whole thing is it's a paralysis of policy.
That's why Donald Trump says he would just go over there and take the oil.
Exit
right?
question.
Right.
Will high gas prices derail the economic recovery, Pat Buchanan?
Economic recovery, I hate to say it, with 1.8% growth in the first quarter, has already been derailed.
Well, the economists said that it's a stall, but they don't believe it's off the tracks. We had terrible weather, and we did have the rising oil prices, but I'm not ready to say we're sinking back to where we were.
Well, an anemic 1.8% annual growth rate in the first quarter is pathetic, and actually, if you exclude inventories, it's only a 0.8% growth rate. And look, these high gas prices are eating into whatever disposable income Americans have left in their pockets. And the chairman of Walmart this week said, our customers are actually running out of money much earlier in the month than they used to. This has the potential to send this economy back into recession.
What about that? High energy prices and high food prices. Is this going to derail the economy?
It's certainly going
to. Could it be a double dip?
There is a real risk that it'll be a double dip. When you have a 1.8% increase in GDP, that is the equivalent of a double dip because we have the most stimulative monetary and fiscal policy. And normally speaking, the economy should be growing at 7%. Now, let me just say this. High energy prices, high food prices are going to take $150 to $200 billion out of the consumer's pockets this year. That is a real headwind for the consumer. And when a consumer sees that every day or every week when he has to fill up his car, it really affects his willingness and his ability and his confidence to go ahead and spend elsewhere. So it is undoubtedly affecting the consumer, and in a very negative way. It's the last thing we need right now.
Is it also going to negatively impact unemployment, making unemployment rates worse?
For sure. If you have a weak, look, the consumer is 70% of the economy. If the consumer who's spending very little now continues to spend very little, it's going to affect unemployment, it's going to affect the whole economy, and we could slide, if not into a double dip in the sense of a decline, you'll have such a weak growth in the economy, it'll be the equivalent of a double dip.
Issue 3, Michelle and Jill. The joint appearance by America's first and second ladies marks the opening salvo in the soft side of the 2012 presidential race. Parade magazine is a highly prized showcase for first ladies and second ladies, with a readership in the high millions. Their joint appearance sends a political message of unity between the Bidens and the Obamas and makes clear that this is the ticket that will lead the country for the next 4 years if reelected. Speculation that Obama might dump Biden is now over.
Question, besides signaling that the 2012 Democratic presidential ticket is going to remain Obama-Biden, what's the other possible political plus that First Lady Michelle and Second Lady Jill bring to the 2012 election? Eleanor Clift.
Well, it's a unity of mothers and women, and I think if you read that article, they talk about their families, and they also talk about the work they're doing with military families and the balance between work and life. So I think reading about their lives and how they're living many of the same problems they're trying to address is very appealing to women, and it's women who really determine presidential elections, and I think that this president is trying to recreate the coalition that elected him in 2008, and both of these women are terrific assets.
Do you think he has to bring back suburban women, whom we did not have in the 2008 election?
I think his problem is independence and, frankly, white voters, John. It's a real problem. They really have diminished, and he's got to get back some of them. I do think this. Initially, Michelle Obama during the campaign came off because of a couple of statements as pretty militant. And I think since she's been the First Lady, I think she's done an outstanding job. And Jill Biden has only been a positive for the administration, although she does not seem to be as well known as say, the wife of Dick Cheney. But I think they're both assets, there's no doubt about it, for the Obama administration. And the more you get them out on the road and get them visible, there's no negatives attached right now, I think, to either of them. And a lot of positives.
Suburban women have soured on President Obama. Why?
Well, I mean, I think the whole array of issues, starting with Obamacare, socialized medicine, first and foremost. I think the economic issues, yes. Women have really borne the brunt of the unemployment crisis in this country to a large extent. And Pat is absolutely right, especially when it comes to the white vote, but white women now are slipping away. So it's interesting to see Michelle Obama and Jill Biden side by side. They have been tremendous assets for their husbands. Remember, President Nixon used to say, I may be controversial, but Pat Nixon isn't. And I think Michelle Obama and Jill Biden have played their cards absolutely perfectly. And this might be the beginning of a new front for the campaign, much more active roles for the first and second ladies.
Are millions of suburban women now the sole breadwinners in their families?
It's not only that. Millions of suburban women live in suburban homes, and their homes have gone down drastically in value, and that was, the home equity was always the largest asset on the balance sheet of the average American family, and we've lost $9 trillion of home wealth, home equity wealth. That is really affecting them, and they see what's going on. What you are also seeing, by the way, since you're also seeing a continuing decline in home prices, is you're not seeing an improvement in employment. And those, or their husbands, or themselves, if they're going on work, they all experience that. Those statistics that you read now are publicly, 8.8, they're nowhere close to the reality. The reality is much closer to 20%, and that affects everybody.
Yeah, I guess I don't see this slippage among suburban women for Democrats.
Soccer mom.
Yeah, but you still have this division between the parties when it comes to reproductive rights and when it comes to health care and health issues. And I think the way that the Republicans went after Planned Parenthood, that's not going to play well in suburbia. Planned Parenthood still has a good brand name, and I think the Republicans have really overreached. And the Medicare proposals, some of those, not soccer moms, but some of those women, they really rely on health care.
False prediction. Trump has peaked. Yes or no?
Not just yet.
Yes, he's fired.
Don't discount Donald Trump.
The answer is no.
No.
Yes, he has.
No, he has not. Bye-bye.
Geico, committed to providing service to its auto insurance customers for over 70 years. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO, any time of the day or night.
How does an investment manager stand the test of time? By taking a long view through all market cycles and keeping a close eye on risk. Franklin Templeton Investments, a solid approach to investing for over 60 years. Gain from our perspective.